What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for November 14th, 2022. IAE is almost here, and we have some updates around the event. Star Citizen Racing was front and center this week, and the Cargo Refactor AMA was filled with exciting news. All that and more on today's Week in Review. And as always, if this is your first Week in Review, this is where I take all of the official Star Citizen news each week, put it into one video, and share some of my opinions about those things. I also live stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/SaltEMike, every day but Monday, so I can get this video out to you guys. But things have been a little bit less frequent lately. I posted on Twitter, Discord as well, so if you guys aren't part of those communities with me, I had a death in the family. My grandfather passed away on Tuesday quite suddenly and surprisingly. We had just spent some time with him on Sunday for his birthday, and yeah, it just came out of nowhere. So I haven't really been around. This coming week, it will be the same thing, as the funeral is coming up this week. So I won't really be available on Twitch as much. I'm going to do my best to just have some normalcy and make videos like this and things like that, as well as like the reaction videos on the second channel. But it's not going to be easy, and it hasn't been easy. So thank you to everybody who's showed their support over this week. Thank you to everybody who may just find it out now through the video and makes a comment down below and says something nice. So I appreciate it, guys. It's really been helpful in these hard times. But to try to get back to some normalcy, let's continue on with the video and talk a little bit about the upcoming patches. And as far as I can tell, I haven't been around much, but I've tried to keep an eye on what's been going on. There was just a little patch for 3.17.4 to check out IAE and just make sure everything was okay. And that's going to be on the 18th through the 30th is when that actually goes live. But in terms of 3.18, we're still just waiting. I don't even know if there was an Evocati patch available for people to check out. So they're really, really struggling trying to get this thing out. But again, a little bit of short-term pain for a lot of long-term gain, we hope. But none of us will know until we get that 3.18 into our hands, right? And for roadmap updates, they started out with a few cards that they added to the 3.18 schedule, and the first one is time trial missions. And I want to emphasize the word missions, because this isn't just adding some tracks or adding the ability to start a time trial or something. These are actually missions to do a time trial, and it might have some leaderboards and rewards, and there's progression and all sorts of things that are being worked on. Even in SCL, I'm not going to mention it in this video, in the video section of this video, but they talked about they're working on things like reputation and stuff like that around these time trial missions. So this is more than what I expected it to be, and it's quite exciting. For the other card, it's the Gen 12 scene renderer. We saw this on an ISC. I'm a little surprised that it's still tentative, because it appeared that it was all done and working, but maybe there's a few things that they have to double check and triple check and make sure that everything's all good. For cards that have passed review and are finalized, we have sandbox prison activities, which we had seen previously as well. Just, in case you haven't heard of them yet, it's just adding more missions, more things to do, more ways to get out of prison. Then things that were added to and removed from the progress tracker. For added to, they added the Crusader Spirit, which is like, okay, whatever. And then they removed the Anvil Legionnaire, which surprisingly, with other topics that we're going to talk about today, like the Cargo Refactor, isn't a priority, because boarding is kind of a big deal when it comes to that. But they gave the excuse of Squadron 42, a classic. And then for video updates, we had an Inside Star Citizen titled Race Chase, but it started out with another Q&A update or feature about Q&A members. And they start out talking about how most people don't like these. And yeah, most people don't, because it doesn't make any sense in regards to actual gameplay and game updates. But they do talk about a little bit about what they do, because this was embedded QA that work with specific teams. But they do it a little bit differently, where they share some little sneak peeks of the IAE halls and maybe a little update for 3.18.
because we've had a bit extra time, we've been able to actually bring out these outposts. They weren't initially meant to come out for 3.18. When 3.17 came out, we had just initially 5 derelict outposts on Microtech, but now we're timesing that by 7. So when 3.18 rolls out, there should be 35 derelict outposts, 10 on Microtech, 10 on Hurston, and between 1 to 6 on various different moons throughout the Stanton system.
And this was a pretty big surprise, the number of actual outposts that they're able to fit in. And I think that the real takeaway from this is that it's the beginning of server meshing, and the ability of what they can fit in a server now is going up, so they can add more things like these. I think they had the ability to add 35 of these before, in terms of they probably had different variants of them, or some modular system where they can easily make 35 variants, but could they fit them in the game was a whole nother story. But I do want to say that taking 35 sort of underwhelming places and adding them to the game doesn't make the game amazing, right? So they still need to really up their game in terms of what we do at these locations, what we find there, what we do with the things that we find, so on and so forth, right? And then we got an update on some things that you may not be aware of.
Currently, I am working on the new rest stop stations that are going to be found in the Pyro system once we release that in the upcoming 4.0 patch. Because these stations are lawless and there's going to be no like green zones to govern your behavior on the stations, we're going over it just to make sure that the locations are fun for the backers to engage in combat. So we've been covering stuff like sniping spots, combat routes, balance against facing AI, also identifying issues, potential issues with the environment that might hinder the gameplay experience.
I don't know why, but I didn't think there was going to be any rest stops at Pyro. I thought it was just going to be Ruined Station. So there are going to be rest stops, but they're going to be completely lawless. So it sounds like a lot of the work that they're doing there is figuring out how to make that fun, when it's not going to be fun for most people there, would be my guess. But hey. And then they showed off a number of racetracks, one in Yella, one on Microtech, and one at Area 18, which most of it was just visual, not really sharing how things worked. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the B-roll of this episode. But then we had a Star Citizen Live, and in this episode they did more of the same, but with more tracks, starting out with a track on Daymar, which looks really, really good. But then we get to see a little bit more of sort of how the missions work and how they update and all those things, and how all that's gonna kind of how we're going to interact with these missions in the first place, not just the tracks. Then they showed Lorville, which is located behind the main building in the city, and then they also shared a track in the clouds at Crusader. All exciting stuff, but I will say this. I have one massive concern, like actually worthy of like a concern thread on Spectrum probably. And if you notice in these track runs, it is a mission marker that is updating. If anybody has played Star Citizen for any amount of time, they have had a problem with mission markers updating at one point or another. And imagine having the best run you've ever had in your life, go through a checkpoint and it doesn't register. I just see that happening. I'm definitely concerned about it. I hope they got this nailed down. I hope it's not as server dependent as it may be, but that's my concern. But I cannot wait to jump into these. I actually raced on Old Vanderval last week just to, get excited again. And it was fun. It was fun. I can't wait. But let's move on to other updates. And we start out with a sneak peek, which was just another outpost on Pyro. I don't know what to do other than just kind of put my thumb up and go cool and just move on. It's just another picture that has no meaning until we're actually kind of getting close to being there, which we just aren't. Then we had the Cargo Refactor AMA recap post, and I want to make sure that the recap post sticks out very clearly, and we'll talk about that in just a second. They started out with loading timers and how that they wouldn't be in 3.18. They are planned eventually to be in the game. Loading and unloading cargo will act exactly the same as it does today in 3.18. For cargo missions, this is kind of a big deal. they want to have us normally trade commodities as we do today with some risk, but then cargo missions we won't be financially tied to. So that's kind of something that they want us to do as more of an entry level thing, was sort of what they pointed out in the post. But there's some omissions in the actual recap here, and I do want to point out that it was slightly edited from the original post, where the designer felt that pirates may not be interested in the cargo that you're running missions for. And I find that to be odd, as if cargo mission boxes are their own commodity, where actual mission boxes or actual commodity boxes are different. And that just doesn't make any sense to me. And Dan actually reached out to me, and I will have a back and forth with him. And if I am able to communicate any sort of information on this, I'll try. But if not, we'll just have to see when we get in game and these missions actually happen and how they go. Then they moved on to stolen cargo, and it has to be sold at a no questions asked terminal. And I'm okay with this as long as it's a placeholder for as short of a time that it can be a placeholder as possible, right? If I was a pirate and stole cargo often, I would want the game to feel like it gave me a little more background onto where I'm moving the goods, like to a specific mission giver, or maybe a piracy group, or some sort of black market situation where just some weird no questions asked terminal. It's very placeholder, right? So I just want to have more lore as to why I would steal a certain cargo over another, and I would love some more depth into who I'm moving this cargo to and from, right? And I think this is just a classic Tony Z's economy, just not doing anything and never existing, and we're just sitting here waiting. So another Tony Z plea of like, just do something, please. Boarding is next, and this was the biggest bombshell from the AMA. The thing that they dropped at the end of the episode in ISC was that the refactor is going to be taking 70% of the time your ship was supposed to explode, therefore its health went to 0. It's just going to be a husk, and you're going to still be alive, and you can defend that cargo inside. It's kind of exciting. It creates a situation where somebody needs to board you, and you can defend a second time. Maybe you're not the best ship pilot, but maybe you're pretty good at FPS. Kind of balances the field there a little bit, right? I like the idea. Can't wait to see it in action. Let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments below, because this is a fundamental change in the way Star Citizen works just from the cargo refactor. Then they quickly talked about snapping cargo. It's going to snap to a grid, whether you're got it in your hands or using a 1SU box. You're going to need to use a tractor beam. It will snap with that as well. And then the mining saddlebags from the prospector. This, I was not able to find it. Maybe it was cut out somewhere and edited. Todd Pappy said 100% cargo refactor. Saddlebags are going to be removed from the prospector. I'm in a mining org. I thought we were going to have a ton of fun this patch coming up. It's not happening. It's not happening, and the excuse was they need to do more work on tractor beams, because I guess these are much larger than 1SU boxes, so they need to be ship-based tractor beams or something like that. But what I will say is that it does sound like, because tractor beams are the issue, that it is a vehicle experience team job. Vehicle experience team is working on their entire refactor of the way ships fly, how fast they go, quantum travel, weapons, components, everything. That takes priority over saddlebags moving from a prospector. I totally understand. I am bummed out about it, but I get why it never made it in. Disappointed, but hey, that's where we're at. And then moving on, Ship Showdown is coming, and they gave us a little bit of insight into what the rewards will be. And the skins are red, which I'm not a big fan of red. Blue's my favorite color. So I did like previous IAE skins than these, but that's okay. I think a lot of people like red as well, so it was probably a nice change for them. Now, we also get these coins, which I think are pretty cool for every ship that you have, and the trophies. And guys, that'll do it for this week's Week in Review. I really do appreciate you guys watching. Yeah, this week was hard to put together. This week was hard. And I really just appreciate you guys being here with me and supporting me through everything that I've ever done. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody in this community. Thank you to everybody in the Star Citizen community. Just thank you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.